And we are back on Hemp Present, and we are talking to Nurse Heather from Good News with Nurse Heather on Cannabis Radio. Heather, I believe that cannabis prohibition is just one symptom of an underlying systematic war against the natural world, and we can see evidence of that in energy policy, in agriculture, and just about everything. You've got extensive background in natural healing modalities and herbal remedies other than and including cannabis. Do you believe that there are other therapeutic natural plant-derived substances like cannabis that may also be in jeopardy of unnecessary over-regulation from the government?
Oh, this was a loaded question, wasn't it? You knew where I was going. Yeah, absolutely. I've attended Native American church ceremonies where peyote is used in the ceremony by the healers and the medicine man. I've also been in ceremony with shaman who provide ayahuasca medicines. I know that a lot of people there's a lot of research going on right now about microdosing with psilocybin for depression and PTSD and various things. So absolutely, all of these plants have been used responsibly by humanity for eternity. I mean, we've always been doing this. And so, to take away the plants and overregulate and make it so that we fear this plant medicine, it's atrocious that this has happened. We really need to come back to, you were talking about trends earlier and I started talking about the terpenes. But in addition to that, that's also led folks to be looking even deeper at what plants have similar terpenes that can support the endocannabinoid system in other ways. And so we're looking at other plant sources that can support the endocannabinoid system. There are a lot of plants out there. Iboga, I believe, is one that's used for opiate reduction because they say that after you do a ceremony or a dose with this, it completely wipes clean your opiate receptors. And after you go, it's hell going through it. But once you've done that overnight, it's clean. You get a clean slate. And so they're finding that is beneficial. So we really need to start investigating. I know MAPS does a lot as far as researching these various plants. And I'm a full supporter of that because plants are our teachers. They are our healers. They support and doctor our spirits. And this is important, specifically right now with the way that we are in the world. We need our spirits to be doctored and healed and nurtured. And plants are here to do that for us.
That is such a great place to close. Heather, you are so amazing. Thank you so much for your healer ways and for being on Hemp Present. How can people find your show, Good News with Nurse Heather?
We're on Facebook. We're on cannabisradio.com. You can look up Good News with Nurse Heather. I'm also on Twitter. It's CannaHeatherRN. And, hit me up on Facebook. I'm there having a lot of fun. I'm Cannabis Nurse Heather on Facebook as well. And also go on and like the new Cannabis Nurses magazine. That's on Facebook as well. A lot of great response there. So join on the bandwagon.
Thank you, Heather. Take care, darling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now I want to get to a weekly feature Hemp Present on CannabisRadio.com, and that's the quote of the week, and here it is. The amount of money and legal energy being given to prosecute hundreds of thousands of Americans who are caught with a few ounces of marijuana in their jeans simply makes no sense. The kindest way to put it. A sterner way to put it is that it's an outrage, an imposition on basic civil liberties and on the reasonable expenditure of social energy, and that's William F. Buckley Jr., firebrand conservative icon. That concludes this installment of Hemp Present on Cannabis Radio. I want to thank my man in the control room, Brasco, and my brave sponsors and producers. Join me next week for my guest, Canadian canna oil guru Rick Simpson, who will explain to us why so many run from the cure. Because when it comes to prohibition, you have the right not to remain silent. Activism requires a voice, so speak up for justice. Till then, stay strong, stand tall, and take it easy.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast or redistribution without proper consent of CannabisRadio.com is prohibited. Earn your PhD in THC monetization with CannabisRadio.com. Don't be late.
BBC News with Julie Candler. More countries have joined Britain in restricting travel to the Egyptian resort of Sharm el-Sheikh after a Russian passenger plane came down on Saturday, killing all those on board. France and Belgium have advised against all but essential visits, while Dutch and German airlines have suspended flights. Britain says the plane was probably brought down by a bomb, but Moscow has advised caution. The charity Médecins Sans Frontières says its staff saw people being shot from the air as they tried to flee a hospital in Afghanistan that was hit by US airstrikes a month ago. Washington said it was working closely with MSF to conclude its investigation. Figures released by the EU reveal that officials are assuming that up to 3 million migrants may arrive by the end of 2017. In a separate report, the UN Refugee Agency said it expected people to continue arriving in Greece from Turkey at a rate of 5,000 a day. Doctors in Britain have for the first time used a pioneering form of gene therapy to cure a previously irreversible cancer. They tweaked the DNA inside a donor's immune cells to create for the patient a system that can hunt and kill the leukemia cells. An official of the International Watchdog on Chemical Weapons has confirmed that rebel groups in Syria have used mustard gas. The full report is confidential, but the comments are the first official confirmation that mustard gas is being used in Syria. Israel's Prime Minister has described comments by his newly appointed spokesman criticising US leaders as totally unacceptable. Ran Baratz had accused Mr. Obama of anti-Semitism and described the US Secretary of State John Kerry as having a mental age that was no more than 12. And campaign advertisements for the Republican Party presidential contender Donald Trump are running for the first time on radio stations in 3 American states. BBC News.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. British Prime Minister David Cameron has defended the suspension of UK flights in and out of Sharm el-Sheikh after talks in London with Egypt's president. Mr. Cameron and President Fattah al-Sisi discussed security at the airport in Sharm el-Sheikh after the UK claimed a bomb may have brought down a flight on its way to Russia over the weekend. UK correspondent Ollie Barrett reports.
David Cameron says the suspension of flights ordered by his government is vital and warned it may be some time before some British tourists can get home. He says it's increasingly likely a terrorist bomb caused the crash of a Russian passenger plane on Saturday with 224 on board. President Sisi, after talks at Downing Street, expressed complete understanding of the British position, but also insisted security at Egyptian airports was tightened 10 months ago at London's request and found to be good enough. Russia's described Britain's suggestions of a bomb on board the crashed jet as speculation. British Airlines say they'll start operating rescue flights from Sharm el-Sheikh on Friday for stranded UK tourists. Ollie Barrett, London.
The European Union says it expects some 3 million refugees and migrants to arrive in Europe by 2017. The predictions are continually being raised as the EU sees huge flows of people seeking sanctuary from war and conflict in countries like Syria, Iraq, and across sub-Saharan Africa. Our Europe correspondent Jack Perrock has more.
The European Commission says the 3 million people set to arrive in the EU would increase the 28-member bloc's population by around 0.4%. The UN says 5,000 people per day will continue to cross the sea from Turkey into Greece, even as the winter months set in, making the journey more treacherous. Despite the EU's Finance Commissioner, Pierre Moscovici, saying the influx could provide a boost to EU economies, many are concerned about the social and cultural ramifications of such large arrivals.
The U.S. Congress is starting months of debate over whether to endorse the recently agreed-upon Trans-Pacific Partnership. The deal, which includes 12 countries accounting for 40% of the global economy, needs to be ratified by American lawmakers. Here's our U.S. correspondent Nick Harper.
The agreement last month made history, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, becoming the largest regional trade agreement of all time. It aims to bring an end to trade barriers between 12 Pacific Rim nations. The White House argues it will boost the US economy. But with the release of the final details, Congress must now digest and debate the deal before voting on it in the spring. Among the newly released details is the fact Vietnam's government has agreed to American proposals which could see reforms to the Asian country's working conditions and labour rights.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Former U.S. President George Herbert Walker Bush is accusing some senior Republican figures of betraying the White House during the presidency of his son, George W. Bush. In a new biography, the first President Bush is witheringly critical of former Vice President Dick Cheney and former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. From Washington, Simon Marks reports.
For years, the first President Bush has offered little commentary on his son's presidency. Now he's told a biographer that former Vice President Dick Cheney became very hardline and built his own empire during George W. Bush's presidency. Donald Rumsfeld is described as arrogant, displaying swagger and a lack of humility. The claims are being published just as the president's other son, Jeb, is trying to win the Republican Party's nomination, a task the book may only complicate. Simon Marks, Washington.
And the gender wage gap exists in all sectors of work in the United States, according to a new study by PayScale, Inc. The data shows that married men earn the highest salaries and single mothers earn the lowest. Mary McCarthy has that story.
The new study shows that fathers in the U.S. earn the highest overall median salaries, over $67,000 annually. Married mothers make a median salary of $20,000 less than that, and single mothers lag significantly behind at $38,000. The trajectory of salaries is also significantly different for men and women. Men's salaries generally increase until past the age of 50, whereas women's salaries tend to plateau by the age of 40. Interestingly, education does not help alleviate the gender wage gap in the U.S. The study shows that the highest pay disparity is among people with PhDs, MBAs, and medical degrees. In Denver, I'm Mary McCarthy.
And that's the latest from Feature Story News. Rebecca Foster reporting.
Being green is good. Growing green is good. Making green is great. CannabisRadio.com.
From the Sky News Centre at 10, some of the thousands of British holidaymakers stranded in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt will be on their way home tomorrow. Downing Street's confirmed flights from the airport back to the UK will resume, but only hand luggage will be allowed. It follows security concerns after Saturday's Russian plane crash. Egypt's President Sisi says a British team asked to check airport security in his country 10 months ago.
We have received the teams, we have cooperated with them, and they checked the security actions. They were happy with that, and we are still happy to cooperate.
Vauxhall is recalling thousands of its Zafira B models after more than 130 reportedly burst into flames. The car manufacturer will write to 220,000 owners. Anti-capitalist protesters have clashed with police in central London this evening. A police car was set on fire and fireworks were thrown at police horses earlier. Drivers in part of the UK could be fined £100 for doing 71 miles per hour on a motorway, as Victoria Bourne reports.
Bedfordshire's Police and Crime Commissioner came up with the idea to permanently turn on speed cameras on the county stretch of the M1 because of budget cuts.
That could generate £1 million, and that's 25 police officers. Those are the alternatives that the government are forcing me to look at.
Safety campaigners aren't happy. Claire Armstrong's from Safe Speed.
They're going to literally use them as a cash machine to fleece the public who happen to go 1 mile an hour over the speed limit.
Downing Street says any money raised would end up going to the government anyway.
In sport, Liverpool have their first Europa League win of the season after a 1-0 victory in Russia against Rubin Kazan. Tottenham also recorded 3 points with a 2-1 win at home to Anderlecht. Celtic suffered disappointment. They lost 2-1 at home to Mulder. And it's been confirmed Sam Burgess will return to rugby league and his former club, South Sydney. He signed a deal until the end of the 2018 season, having only switched to rugby union a year ago. That's the latest. I'm Annie Joyce.
Your connection to quality cannabis insurance services is spelled K-A-E-R-C-H-E-R. That's Karcher Insurance. We have worked with ventures like cannabis for over 60 years. We're proud to represent over 50 companies with tailor-made cannabis business plans for owners just like you to insure your product, your plant,